Well, I highly recommend the tour. I will say this, I think it's not really ready for prime time yet, but Sarah and I got to be chased by Godzilla uh, yesterday, or the Jurassic Park dinosaur. That was pretty fun. Um, So our final speaker today is from Sarah Yager, and she will have a slightly longer presentation, and it is called the AV Revolution: How Rural and Small Urban Communities Are Benefiting Today. And Sarah Yager is in business development manager at May Mobility, which is a private startup company out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. With 5 years of direct AV experience, she has been a business development manager working on municipalities, universities, state departments of transportation, creating programs that provide clean, equitable transportation options and communities throughout the country.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, I guess it's still morning. So I know that I am what is keeping you from lunch. So we will try and keep this, somewhat interactive. My great panelists here have already gone through a lot of the why AVs, the how AVs, and the what are AVs. I do want to touch a little bit more on the why. So I've got kind of an agenda today. Originally was going to talk about a little bit more in detail about the why and the how, but we've done a little bit of that already. So I will go over the why. I will go over May Mobility and what we are doing as a company and how we're putting that technology out into the world today. And then some rural challenges, because I know that especially here in the New England states, rural is very important and tends to be an area that can get left behind when it comes to some of these technologies. And so how can we bring how can we bring this technology to the rural communities and make it work here? So before I actually show you that slide, I am hoping for a little bit of participation. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and just with a quick show of hands, would like to see what your answers are. And this goes a little bit differently at each one, so we'll see how it works here. I am going to start with an interesting one that we probably won't get a lot of hands for, and that's okay. But wondering how many of you have a young adult in your life that does not have a driver's license? Okay, great. All right, next question. How many of you, or raise your hand if you have a friend or a loved one that no longer drives due to their age? Okay. How about a friend or a loved one that doesn't drive due to a disability? Okay. And last one, raise your hand if the pandemic had an impact on how your community moves, transportation in your communities. Okay. All right. So a couple of interesting statistics here. There are 25.5 million Americans that have travel limiting disabilities. Annually, there's about 42,000 Americans that die each year in roadway crashes. If you think about that, that's the entire population of Bangor and Orono, so pretty significant. Less than 40% throughout the country of folks that are the ages between 16 and 19 are getting their driver's license today. That is down significantly. It used to be as high as 68%, and now we're under 40. 2030 is coming. In 2030, 1 in 5 people in America will be of retirement age, and all of the baby boomers will be older than 65. So what does that mean for us? It means obviously transportation is going to be an issue. Transportation as a whole, whether it's autonomous transportation, whether it's transit in general, transportation is very important, and 100% of our people need to be able to count on reliable, equitable, and sustainable transportation. So with that said, how do we do that? With this changing world and the changing trends that we're seeing, the relationship to driving is very different, as I mentioned, with younger people not wanting to get their driver's licenses, with our population getting older. How do we make sure that we have that transportation that covers everyone? With the personal car expenses, as John had mentioned, very expensive to own a vehicle. Infrastructure is very expensive. For cities, the cost of one parking space on average across the country is $30,000 for one parking space. Um, when we add all of those up and then you add in the labor challenges that we face, 4 out of 5 agencies have had to cut service, and 91% of the agencies across the country are claiming that they have driver shortages because people don't want to do that anymore. So what do we do? How do we make sure that we have that? Well, that's one of the reasons why we exist. That is one of the reasons why May Mobility was created. Essentially, right now, today, innovation is here. It's exciting. It's cutting edge. But in the next 2 to 5 years, there's going to be that economic shift that really show that it's advanced to a point where it now makes sense from an economic standpoint. And then obviously the long term is, it's coming, so we need to be prepared for it. So those are kind of the hows and the whys. As far as for May Mobility itself, we were created in 2017 by Ed Olson. He was a university professor at University of Michigan. And Ed worked in the automotive field. He worked for Toyota, he worked for Ford, worked on autonomy, very, very passionate about robotics. He actually won the DARPA Robotics Challenge. Wanted to start a company, wanted to kind of get outside of the automotive industry itself and the R&D there. And he wanted to bring technology into the world. He believed very strongly that he didn't want to just create technology for technology's sake, but he wanted to be able to implement it in our society in ways that were going to be meaningful. So he created May Mobility. You can kind of see our mission there to transform cities through AV technology and create a safer, greener, more accessible world. He also felt that we needed to be a little bit different than some of the other AV companies out there. We're all great and wonderful, but a little bit different business model. He felt that, transit, knowing that transit is very essential, he wants to work with the people that do transit best. And that is the cities and the agencies that are already doing it and have been doing it for years and years. He didn't want the robo-taxi model. He didn't want to, kind of bring vehicles into a city and create our own fleet and our own company and our own base, but rather he wanted to work with those cities, those agencies, those state DOTs to fill some of the gaps that currently exist and be able to then provide new and useful shared models of transportation that can be incorporated into the existing transportation ecosystem. Since our inception, we have provided more than 350,000 rides to the public. These are not just in demonstrations, these are actual on-road public roads programs. We have multiple sites located throughout the country. Some of them are programs that were started through grant funds and were, very limited timeframes, started as pilots. And you'll see more and more are becoming long-term sustainable programs. And we do this through a full turnkey program that includes the vehicle, the autonomous driving technology, maintenance, insurance, community engagement, data sharing. It's kind of a whole gamut of information and service that we provide with the programs that we set up. We actually establish locations at every deployment site so that we secure real estate there. We hire from the local community for the new programs that we're bringing in and the new roles that are being introduced, and really become a part of that community so that we can learn and grow and know what that needs and how we can give that information back to the city, to the transit agency, and whatever it may be. The type of service that we provide is kind of a hybrid. It is not a door-to-door. We're not going to pick you up in your driveway, and it is not a fixed route. So we don't follow an exact path for every trip that we make. We do what I like to call kind of hybrid microtransit. It is an on-demand model. within a geofence zone. So within a specific area, generally right now, about 10 square miles or less, we would design pickup and drop off points that are then utilized as your points where we would pick up and drop off. So you pull up an app just like you do on an Uber or a Lyft today. You choose the point that you are closest to or that you want picked up from, and you choose your destination, and it arrives. Your AV arrives. The technology that we use, we are Toyota is a partner for us. They have been an investor since the beginning with May. And so we currently use the Toyota Sienna Autonomous. This vehicle is a drive-by-wire vehicle, and it is built and manufactured specifically with the the ability to add our driving technology to it. So while it is technically still retrofit, so to speak, it is much more OEM quality than just taking a random vehicle off the road and putting our technology on it. We work with them directly to outfit the sensors and things like that. So they are a part of that process all along. We have two versions of this vehicle. We have the standard version, which is a 5-seater vehicle. And we have an accessible version, which allows for one wheelchair and 2 ambulatory passengers. These vehicles, as you can see, are outfitted with LiDAR, camera, radar, and our autonomous technology, which we have a patented program that we use called MPDM. And basically what MPDM does is it allows that vehicle to have an imagination. It runs thousands of in-vehicle live real-time simulations to account for what it's seeing in its world. So as the vehicle is driving, it takes into consideration all of the other road agents, bicycles, vehicles, um, you know, buildings, pretty much everything within that with that environment. It runs them through a series of simulations and essentially pits them against each other in a tournament of such as to what it would predict will happen with each of those road agents. That way it has the decision that it can make based on the outcome of that tournament as to what driving action it would take. This is a little bit different than some of the other companies out there. We have a lot of companies out there that work on a very strict rule-based, if the light is green, you go. If the light is red, you stop. Ours is a little bit different because it takes into consideration the velocity of the vehicles coming towards you, the pedestrians that might be on the street. It kind of looks at all of the different road agents and says, what could each and every one of these do? So as far as deployments go, we have opened, as I mentioned, in multiple places throughout the country. Grand Rapids, Minnesota is our most rural and probably the most relevant for a lot of you here. It is a population of only about 11,000. They have 5 vehicles running on in their program today. It covers 5.1 square miles and has about 70 stop locations. Very, very popular program there. It was just extended actually for another 3 years and added additional vehicles as well as additional stops to this program. We just in June surpassed 10,000 riders. So in a population of 11,000, that's huge. We have a huge repeat ridership there at 91%. About 9% of our riders are wheelchair users. That actually is a statistic a little bit old. It was from more of the early spring. In the summer, that goes up. We've had a much higher, and then about 50% of our riders there are seniors. We also have, urban and suburban. Ann Arbor, Michigan is another example, and Arlington, Texas. And I know I don't have a whole lot of time left, so I'll go through fairly quickly here so we can get to some questions. But I also wanted to talk about some rural challenges. We recognize that, there are factors in rural areas that can be a challenge for AVs. We are not afraid to address those. That's why you will see our deployments in a lot of other states other than the really warm, hot, nice, flat places. We want to know what it takes to make AVs work and make them work everywhere. So weather can be a factor, road speeds, the connected systems and cell service, lane markings, gravel roads, um, funding, just resources in general, and acceptance. So we are combating some of this. We do obviously work in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, as I mentioned. So that is snow operations. We are working there. We've worked there through the last 2 winters and we've learned a lot, but we've also operated a lot. Our program has not stopped. One of the great things, we do still have operators in the vehicle right now. So this is a transportation service. We don't stop service if the autonomous vehicle can't work autonomously. We still do then perform the service in manual because we are still learning in those environments. As far as funding sources, each program's funded a little bit differently. There's local funds, state funds, federal funds, grant programs, and we have just a number of different ones that we've been through with each of those programs. And then we do a lot of community engagement. This one's huge for us. We work with the communities for adoption. We work to create the program so that the communities feel more a part of that. They're more apt to use it and really help us build that program so that we have the ridership. And we also work with the workforce as well. We just were involved in or we are becoming involved in a SMART grant that was won recently, where we actually got the backing of one of the unions, which if you know anything about AVs and unions, that is a huge accomplishment. They're starting to look at ways that we can work together and see how we can perform workforce development together and make that work. So anyone that is interested in finding out new next steps, we can definitely talk about that more. I think my time is up, but it's really just a matter of kind of gathering together your ideal AV solution. And basically what that means is identifying the needs in your community, determining the partners that you need to work with, because each program you need some different partners, establishing the routes, assembling the funding, and then launching that program. So thank you very much.